Welcome to the History Walk in Schellsburg, Pennsylvania, 2024. Nestled in the beautiful countryside of Bedford County, Schellsburg is a historic town that captures the essence of early American life. Schellsburg was founded by John Schell, who came to the area from Montgomery County in 1800. He purchased land known as 9 Mile Town, then in 1801 bought adjoining land, where Schellsburg was built. Laid out in 1810, Schellsburg became an official borough in 1838, the second borough created in the county.
I always like to talk briefly about what I know you've heard it, and I think you've heard it, how John Schell got here, and his wife was a Hilligas. That's how I got really interested early on here. John was my fifth great uncle, married to Elizabeth Hilligas, but that's how all the Hilligases came here. 8 of the 10 Hilligas children came with the Shells to Bedford County. John Schell had been coming through the area, and then he would go down the Ohio River to Kentucky. And then when the Indian uprising started getting too great, he decided to come back this way. And he settled in Bedford County because it most reminded him of his homeland in Germany. His grandfather came here as same as the first Hilligas's grandfather. They came to this Pennsylvania in 1727, so they've been here a long time. But they settled here, and they had a lot of money, the Shells, obviously, in the early 1800s to build these beautiful homes out of brick. It's about like Bedford, and this was the second oldest borough in Bedford County, founded in 1808. They chose to put this marker here. They're not sure where. He had his first ag extension office, A.B. Ross, but it was the first in the country, if you read the sign here. In 1910, we had a celebration here in 2011 that we dedicated this monument at this property.
In June 2012, this marker was dedicated to commemorate the first extension agent in Pennsylvania and one of the earliest in the whole United States. A.B. Ross was Pennsylvania's first agent in 1910. Since then, agents continue to bring their expertise in many areas to the county, such as nutrition, family life, animal health, pest control, farm management, along with organizing and maintaining volunteer leadership for the youth in the 4-H program. As a young man, A.B. helped his uncle on a farm here in Schellsburg. Later, he became a lawyer practicing in Cleveland, Ohio, until he became ill and returned home to Schellsburg in 1907. While he was recuperating, he became interested in scientific agriculture and wanted local farmers to benefit from his learnings. At first, he traveled to farms on horseback, but after the U.S. Department of Agriculture Office of Farm Management recognized Ross's efforts, they supplied him with an automobile so he could travel through Bedford County, at least 5 surrounding counties. He quoted, "Apples are the future in Bedford County." If he could see us now in the beautiful orchards that we have. Ross published several poems for children and his most famous book, Big Crops from Little Gardens. And there's an example pictured here on the flag of that book. And currently there is a leadership program named in honor of A.B. Ross for grades 7 through 12 to provide 4-H members hands-on learning about agriculture. There is an emblem there showing the patch that they receive in 4-H. And he died in Montgomery County, and the cause was dementia. And then right behind you, these pillars, this was the Poorman Colvin property. This property is between the bushes here, the stone pillars.
You'll see a foundation wall, and it comes over to here. And then it goes over that way. You see how it connects over there at that house. There used to be two houses here. There was a small house, about as big as what you see there, and then a larger home here, and it was owned by the Poorman family. And the Poormans were the first undertakers here in Schellsburg.
William Y. Poorman was born here and remained living here his entire life. He married Anna Sanson Poorman, and they had 8 children. William was an undertaker and remained in that business until his death. In 1908, the centennial celebration of Schellsburg, he rode in the parade in a carriage with George Slack, and they were the 2 of the oldest citizens. Their son Samuel S. Poorman married Maud Hissong Poorman. Samuel was the postmaster and a barber. His business was across the street in the buildings that were torn down between Dr. Brandt's and the Knopfsnyder's house, right in here.
This is one of the oddest homes that I've ever seen for a colonial home. The kitchen is downstairs in the basement, and if you've been in it, some have. We had one, when we had our thing in 2012, we were down there, and it's really different. It's a beautiful home inside, beautiful. But the main floor doesn't have a kitchen. It's downstairs in the basement. But it's well appointed, the entire home. But this was the home of Flora Shoemaker. She was a noted artist in the area. She had done a painting that hung in the Methodist church up here that burnt to the ground back in was the 50s. It's set on the other side of May's garage. There's an empty lot there. That's where it's set. But everything burnt but that painting. And you can see it today. It hangs in the New Paris Fellowship Church, which it used to be United Fellowship, but it hangs in that church. This house goes back, well, they have it written over there, 1830, but the lot was owned by the Kegg family, and they also owned the lot across the street. Kegg's a very early name in Bedford County, along with the Shells, and later on the Colvins. But this house was supposed to have been built in 1830. But Nicholas Kegg is the one who deeded the property to Flora Shoemaker. It says here that she taught school for 22 years, Flora, and 19 of them were in Schellsburg School, and she has attended the classical seminary. I don't know if you've ever heard that there was a seminary school here. It burnt down. It was built and burnt within 2 years. We have pictures of the fire and people standing around it in the office there too. Hot ash from the whetstone mill caused the fire to start. The whetstone mill was just down here. It doesn't say what they were burning, but it burnt to the ground. It says that she made 9 other murals and pictures for churches in the area. I don't know where any of them are though. And it says that from 1956 to 1985, the house was owned by Catherine Colvin. I mean, there's Colvin ownership all through these homes. It's a wonder it wasn't Colvinsville or something instead of Schellsburg, but he found that it's so therefore he gets the namesake. So
We're going to look across the street at the Knopfsnyder house. It was built by the Keggs in 1825. At least they lived there then. It was probably built right before that. Went to Blackburns, Krauses, Millers, McVickers, Haymakers, Whitmore, and then to Newlands, Bobbin, and then to Carl Knopfsnyder. The Whitmore family owned this house for 91 years. First, William Whitmore and his wife May Colvin Whitmore called this home. Dr. Whitmore was born in 1853 and died at the age of 31. Eventually, Florence, their daughter, lived in the eastern half of the home, and Bill, their son, lived in the western half. Bill Whitmore was married to Emily Schell Whitmore, and they lived by the Colvin-covered bridge after they divorced. Bill moved into the Whitmore home with his sister. Emily Schell Whitmore was the daughter of Walter Schell, and John Schell was her great-great-grandfather. So the Shells owned the property by the covered bridge, and that's why he lived there when they were married. Bill was a justice of the peace from 1919 to 1931. He was considered an expert antique furniture and an expert in town history. He was also a member of the Odd Fellows. Florence never married. She taught piano lessons for many years from the East Room and had musicals in her home. It is said that Dr. Whitmore used to keep specimens from his doctoring in jars in the basement. When a local girl was helping Florence can vegetables in late summer, Florence told her to just dump out the contents of the jars, wash them out, and they would be use those same jars for canning. Isn't that nice? When I first started coming here and I saw that blue man, I thought, what the heck's this blue man? But you know what? I get it now. John Schell probably built that home. And it went from Schell's to Danekers to Frazier's and Williams, Colvin's, Mary Hyde, Blackburn, and then Ruth Bracken, the mayor, owns the house. She currently lives in this Victorian-style house. The original house was half of the current size. The original part of the home is made of logs, but covered now. The garage-like building at the other end of the lot, back in the back, was a wheelwright shop. In the 1850s, a craftsman here built and repaired wooden wheels for carriages, wagons, riding chairs, and even cannons. In the early 1800s, Frederick Goeb lived in front of the log house. He was a printer and famous for printing the first Bible in German west of the Allegheny Mountains. He later moved to the house at the corner of Pitt and Market Street, the Schell Colvin house. Upstairs, there is a door with an iron latch, which is known to mysteriously open itself. At one time, this home housed an ice cream store. Mary Hyde had it. We missed that. The mayor's sense of humor is evident by the blue mannequin that sits on her porch, adorned in outfits that change according to the season. A family member gave her the mannequin, which she painted just like the Blue Man musical group. I like the mayor's house. I like it.
Now this next establishment, we recently learned from someone that a lady who was in her 90s told a member of our group when they were young that this used to be a bar or tavern, and that she would come here with her father. But we don't have any pictures, or anyone who's living has any recollection of that. And more recently, it was this Mombuckles, which was a candle shop, which I recall when it was open. But it hasn't been open, I'll bet, for 10 years. So we call this the Kemmerer House, Kemerer / Elsie Colvin House. So Elsie Colvin also lived here, or a Colvin, and it was owned by the Burns family until 1939 or 1839 when they sold it to the Kemmerers. Then it passed through the Kerrs and eventually went to Frank Colvin, Elsie Colvin, and then the Emmerichs in 1993. The Kemmerers lived here for 90 years, and of course you can see it's been remodeled. It doesn't resemble what it once looked like.
John and Marianne Rock Kemmer had one child, Virginia Kemmer. Virginia, Jenny as she was known, was instrumental in the planning and orchestration of the Schellsburg Centennial in 1908. And on the flag, there's a picture of the parade in 1908. This home was at one time an inn for travelers through town. Like several doctors who had offices on Main Street, there were also several inns. Elsie Colvin, a Schellsburg school teacher, called this home from the 40s up to the 70s. She is pictured here along with the school where she taught. Okay, this is the Colvin Garage. It was owned by, there was a house here. It was owned by the Burns, the Kemmers, the Rocks, Wirtzes, Colvins, lots of Colvins, Sweets, and then Alan Schaefer bought it. He's known as Slab Schaefer. At one time, Vitalis Wirtz owned a house on this site. He had a farm over on Dry Ridge, and he drove his horse and wagon over to the farm almost every day. About 1928, C. Frank Colvin bought the house and built Colvin's Garage here. Dutch Colvin, as he was known, operated the garage and sold Bosch and Philco radios and also refrigerators, Philco refrigerators, and the Graham Page automobiles. Tourists going through town used to stop to listen to the radio. Back in the 40s and the 50s, many townsmen would loaf here on the benches outside. Also, I discovered when I was going through old newspapers, they would hold square dances here. And that was like every week they were having square dances. And they also had fundraising dances for Halloween and for Valentine's Day. And I think that's funny because he decorates for Halloween and all the holidays. And also Jay Leno stopped here when it was the Packard Garage. Okay, so now we're going down to Alan's house. Prior to 1864, James Burns lived in the home. It was sold to Feasters, Grimmingers, Whetstones, Taylors, Ritchies, Triplets, and then to Schaefer's. James Burns, the first known owner of this property, lived to be 102 years old. He was in the Revolutionary War and is buried in Schellsburg Cemetery. This house is much older than it looks, and it's probably made of log. William Vickery Taylor and Laura Taylor lived here for 30 years. They are the parents of Lorraine Taylor Kaiser, who married the banker and lived in the Millstone house. Dr. Thomas Sheldon Taylor, who lived next door in the large stone house. Wilmer, who moved to New Paris, and J. Howard, who eventually moved to New Paris, where he built a then state-of-the-art house for his wife. Howard met his future wife, Elsie Pitcairn, when her family's carriage upset by their summer cabin up on the ridge.
And she happened to be a Pitcairn from Pittsburgh. I don't know if you know about the Pitcairns, but Robert Pitcairn ran the Pennsylvania Railroad, and his brother John was the founder of Pittsburgh Plate Glass. So the Pitcairns had a lot of money. So what happened is the man in this house, Howard Taylor, fell in love with the girl from the carriage, right? And they got married. But the Pitcairns didn't like that because they had a lot of money. And of course, he was a gentleman farmer. He just had a lot, their family had a lot of land. And he was 20 years older than she was. So what he did is he went to New Paris and built a big house. And they didn't have water then, but he ran the pipes from up on his land under the sidewalk to that house so that she could take a bath or shower in that house. They had about 3 children, 3 girls, which was one of them was my grandmother. But the problem was she got pregnant with twins and she died. And so did the twins. Oh. So the twins died, she died, and Howard Taylor, who found the elk, raised the girls out there in New Paris. So that was his father, Howard Taylor's father and mother that lived here. He lived here too. And their other son was the doctor who had that house. I want to talk about the triplets for a minute because Wayne Triplett, he was a good sportsman. And one of the things he did in high school, he was a very good pitcher. And he was drafted. He could either go with the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox. And he went with the Boston Red Sox. He was there for a season and hurt his arm and couldn't pitch anymore. But he was really a good pitcher. Then he went into World War II, and he was at the Battle of the Bulge. And at the Battle of the Bulge, he was severely injured. And they left him for dead. And he was laying out in the field. He had been shot in the head, and a bullet came out his mouth. It's in the newspaper article that I have.
Wayne lived here in Schellsburg for the next 25 years. Currently, this home is the home of Alan Slab Schaefer. From February through December, he decorates for each holiday to the delight of passers-by. He is the go-to guy in town for just about any problem that arises when you need a strong helping hand. A few years ago at the Schellsburg Old Log Church Historical Society, we honored him at our Christmas tree trimmings for all his contributions to the town. So isn't that a nice story about the Battle of the Bulge? Okay, John Schell owned this property in 1809. It was sold to the Conleys, to the Horns, to the Statlers, to the Bowsers, Morris, Claras, and Colvins, and then after Wards and Graham, and then Joan Roberson owns it now. She's a member of our historical society. Victor Colvin's parents, James and Margaret. Margaret's father was James Albert Sill. Her great-great-grandfather was George Sill, and he was an indentured servant. Victor's father, James Harry Colvin, owned the mill by the Colvins Covered Bridge. Victor's brother James, age 16, was injured and died in his father's flour mill when he was attaching a belt to the wheel. That was in 1908. Victor's other brother, Joe Colvin, with his wife, Nell, took over the mill. In 1963, Victor's two sisters were struck by a car and killed on Route 30, and it was right down in there, Connie told me. They were both in their 60s when they were killed. Dr. Victor Colvin graduated from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine in 1931, and then spent the next 30 years as a physician in the Navy. In 1959, Dr. Colvin returned here to his hometown and opened his private practice. At age 83, he said, "I will try to keep practicing until the good Lord is through with me." He was mightily impressed with the advances in modern medicine. He recalled that tonsillectomies were once performed right in the doctor's office. There were no immunizations for diseases such as measles, mumps, or diphtheria. He lamented that lots of people died that would not have with today's modern medicine. Because he was proud of his medical career, he at one time considered writing a book. To our knowledge, he never did. People around here remember the doc as jolly, kind man who made home calls.
Finds a way to get us back to the start again. To get us back to the start again. To get us back to the start. Life finds a way to bring us back where it all began. To bring us back where it all bring us back where it all began. Life is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Hide away to rest and feel alive again. To rest and feel alive again. To rest and feel alive. Forget all the noise, we can just let it fade away. We can just let it fade away. We can just let it fade away.